Hello and welcome back to Rob's Movie Reviews. I've been doing a lot of horror movie reviews as of late, leading into Halloween, which is now about a week away. Sorry, by the way, that this video is a little late this week. I've had some things I've had to get done. This week's video, I am not going to be reviewing a horror film, but it is still a good Halloween film. It's based off of a very popular board game. The game is Clue. In 1985, John Landis and Jonathan Lynn got together and turned Clue into a movie, and they did a great job. If you've never seen this film, you definitely need to check it out. It's a great whodunit murder mystery. It's very comical. It's very funny. It's got a great cast. We're talking, it's got Tim Curry, Madeline Kahn, Christopher Lloyd, Martin Mull, and the list goes on. It's just a wonderful cast. It's all set, of course, in an old Victorian style mansion in New England in the 1950s, and all your characters get letters telling them to arrive at this mansion to settle a ongoing situation, which it turns out they're all being blackmailed by Mr. Body. Everyone there is encouraged to use an alias, so that's where we get the Colonel Mustard and Mr. Green and Professor Plum, and they all come there expecting to meet this Mr. Body and confront him. And unfortunately, early in the evening, Mr. Body is murdered. Get the pun there, Mr. Body. He's murdered, and as the night progresses, the cook gets murdered, the maid gets murdered, several people that show up unannounced, a stranded motorist, he ends up being murdered, a police officer. We just have a whole slew of murders, and the group splits up. They search the house. They're trying to find clues to give them the identity of who the killer is. Now, the very clever thing I like about this film is that it actually has three different endings. At the cinema, they would randomly rotate the endings because they didn't want people giving away the ending. Once they came and saw the film, they didn't want them going out and telling their friends and giving away the ending, so they would randomly change in reels and use a different copy of the film, and the last 10 minutes of the film would be different depending on which night of the week you went. They would just randomly load it and play it, and you never knew which ending you were going to get. Now, on the DVD, they have all three endings. And I believe once they started showing it on television, they show it with all three endings. So you get to see three different possible ways that the events of the evening played out. But this is a great movie. It's absolutely hilarious, but at the same time, it's still a good whodunit murder mystery. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, if you haven't seen it, you really should check this movie out. It was the brainchild of John Landis, who came up with the original story. Then he got together with a gentleman named Jonathan Lynn. They hammered out a screenplay, and Landis was the executive producer on the film, and Jonathan Lynn directed it. Tim Curry is cast in the role. He's the only main cast member that's not one of the characters from the board game. He plays a butler named Wandsworth, who originally they had thought about using Roland Atkinson in that role. You know him as Mr. Bean, but it was decided at that time in 1985, when this film was being made and released, that he wasn't well enough known to American audiences yet. They wanted somebody with a little more recognizable, so they ended up going with Tim Curry, which I believe was a very wise decision. I think he did a terrific job. I'm a huge Tim Curry fan. I love him and everything I've ever seen him in. He's awesome. He was wonderful in this film. Madeline Kahn was brilliant in this movie as well, along with Christopher Lloyd, being Christopher Lloyd. I mean, he's just great. You can't go wrong with him. No matter what role you put him in, he's going to pull it off. But this is definitely a good Halloween film. If you haven't seen it, you can. I'm sure you can. It's on various streaming services. I believe it may even be on YouTube. You can get the DVD or the Blu-ray of it. But yeah, this is one you definitely would have a fun time. This would be a good Halloween party movie to have playing in the background. This is a great movie, and I highly recommend it. And that's going to wrap up this week's review. Be sure to join me back next week. Be my final horror movie review, as next week is Halloween. And I'll be revealing my favorite horror film of all time and giving you a review of it. So until then, you all take care.